Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to provide a trigger and content warning. On Smart Talks, we often discuss sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including sexual violence, trauma, and abuse. We understand that these conversations can be challenging and may bring up difficult emotions for some of our listeners. Our full content warning pertaining to today's episode is in the show notes. If at any point in time during this episode you feel overwhelmed, we encourage you to take care of yourself, whether that means pausing the episode, seeking support from a trusted person, or accessing resources. Your well-being is our priority. If you or someone you know needs help, you can visit elizabethsmartfoundation.org for a list of resources or contact the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE. Thank you for joining us today. Now let's begin.
I'm so excited and thrilled to be here with Dr. Amen at Amen Clinics. And it's a special episode because we're here and because we've just scanned my brain and we're going to be talking about it. But I would love people, first of all, to know how incredible you are. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you for being here and thank you for helping us spread the message of brain health. So I'm a psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, adult psychiatrist, father, grandfather, husband, but I'm most known for looking at people's brains. I always ask, why are psychiatrists the only medical specialists that never look at the organ they treat? And 33 years ago, I knew it was wrong. I knew it would change. I just didn't know I was going to be part of the change. So we've scanned over 250,000 brains on people from 155 countries. And what we learned is most psychiatric illnesses are not mental health issues, they are brain health issues. Get your brain healthy and your mind will follow. So our mission is to end the concept of mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. And I'm most famous on the street for TikTok. I figured out if you can say, so for those people listening, you want to start TikTok, write down 100 things you say all the time, and then film yourself saying them in less than 30 seconds. And anyways, I love educating the population about our work and about brain health.
I love it. So starting off, we do just silly either or questions, just almost like icebreakers, even though now I feel it's almost an intimate relationship because you've looked at my brain. And how many people have looked at the inside of my brain? I don't think anyone. But do you prefer summer or winter?
Summer.
Summer. Okay, if you could travel 50 years in the past or 50 years in the future, which one would you choose?
Future.
Future. Easily. You knew it.
Are you a sweet or savory kind of person?
Sweet.
Cold weather or warm weather?
Warm.
Okay.
That's it.
Those are ours.
So you've taken me to the future, which
Yes.
is so exciting.
With warm weather.
You've taken me to Hawaii for warm weather. I did my child psychiatry fellowship in Hawaii and love it madly. And my grandfather, and you took me to my grandfather because he was a candy maker. So those simple questions brought some wonderful memories for
Nostalgia.
me. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, just starting off, I have been fascinated by, just how like trauma can affect people's brains and I've been asked, so I feel like people come to me looking for miracles, looking like I have a secret or that I'm like gatekeeping a secret to like being okay, like going through something and being okay. And I wish that I had something to give them or something to say. I really don't know what to say to help people. Like, I don't think I'm keeping a secret on like getting through trauma whatsoever. But what would you tell those people?
That everybody's different, that you always want to work on keeping your brain as healthy as it can be. Because the question I asked you is, so how did you do it, right? You know, now, was what, 20 some years later, you're a healthy, intact person who's got a family, who's got a purpose, and that's amazing given what you've been through. And one of the things I said, I actually wrote a paper on it a long time ago on post-Vietnam stress disorder. So it was even before we were using the words PTSD. It's the brain you bring into the trauma that often determines how you come out of the trauma. And what's the first thing I told you about your brain?
I have a beautiful brain.
You have a beautiful brain. And so odds are the health of your brain going into that horrendous 9 months, that helped to support you so that you could make the decisions you made, which in retrospect were brilliant because it helped you survive.
So you're saying those protective factors help to set up maybe what your future brain health might be like or look like despite a traumatic event happening?
Yes, but it goes both ways. So if you come out of a traumatic event and you're floored by it, as many people are, the first thing to get right is brain health. If you start sleeping, if you start eating better, because too often people are traumatized, it fires up their emotional brain. And do you know what calms it down? Alcohol and marijuana and sugar and opiates. And it's like, no, 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 because it's a short-term fix that's going to give you a long-term problem. And so if you really work to have a healthy brain, the therapy, which I'm a huge fan of, especially one called EMDR, specific psychological treatment for trauma, it just works better if you're eating right, if you're exercising, if you're sleeping, and we're going to check your important numbers. So I want to know, how's your vitamin D level? How's your thyroid? How's your iron? What's your blood count like? We're going to look at all those things because your brain is a physical organ. And when it works right, your brain creates your mind. When your brain is right, your mind is better.
So I want to back up because I think it's really important. I was talking to a friend the other day and I said, well, everyone knows that trauma affects the brain. And he was like, no, I didn't realize that, Heather. I don't think everyone does understand that. And I think a lot of people could understand maybe how a serious physical injury could affect, like getting in a car accident where there's blunt force trauma or something to your head. They could understand a physical injury there, but I think a lot of people don't understand that trauma can change your brain as well. So for the normal person out there that might not know this or might not be nerds like us that love to dig into this kind of stuff, can you kind of explain that concept?
When you go through trauma, it activates the suffering circuits in the brain. And as we talked about what happened to you, clearly there was intense long-term suffering. Well, sometimes when you activate them, they stay active. And so it leaves this trauma signature long after the trauma's over. I published a new paper today. It's the world's largest imaging study on adverse childhood experiences. So we have looked at over 7,000 patients, and we have their ACE score. And it's on a scale of 0 to 10. How many bad things happened to you as a child? One of the protective things, again, for you is your 1, which happened when you were kidnapped. But if you score 4 or more, you have an increased risk of 7 of the top 10 leading causes of death. If you score 6 or more, you die 20 years early. But you don't have to. And what we saw in scans is it activated those suffering circuits in the brain. The cool thing, I also published a study on EMDR, specifically actually on police officers. It calmed it down because these were all police officers who had PTSD from shooting, being involved in shootings.
Wow. So this is maybe a little bit farther out there, but I guess now I'm just like curious. So if someone goes through something terrible, and I mean, I really have enjoyed the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and how like your body can like hold on to trauma and how it surfaces in other ways. Like, is it unreasonable to think that there is a connection like between traumatic, like something you've experienced trauma, like maybe it's affected your brain and then is like surfacing as like breast cancer or like heart problems?
Oh, there's no question in my mind that the brain and the body are connected to each other. And so if you've had trauma, it can manifest itself by damaging your gut. And if it damages your intestinal tract, now it's damaging your immune system and puts you at higher risk for things like cancer. And I think the ACE research shows a higher incidence of cancer, hypertension, heart disease, obesity, depression, addiction.
And so for people who don't have, I mean, access to your clinics, where is an easy place for people just to start taking care of their brains better? Like if someone just came across this episode, what would be some of the first things you can be like, you can start today by taking better care of your brain by doing?
So the first thing is to just ask yourself this one question every day. What I'm doing today, is it good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that, and most second graders actually know the answers to the questions, is this good for my brain or bad for it? You just start making better decisions. They can read my book, Change Your Brain, every day. It's sort of my greatest hits in 366 short essays, because I wrote it during a leap year, so it's got to have more than 365. And brain health is really 3 things. It's brain envy. You have to care about it. Now you've seen yours, and you see even how much better it can be, right? So I want you to love it and care for it, and then avoid things that hurt it. You just have to know the list and do things every day that help it. And one of the reasons you have a beautiful brain is you're a runner, which means, because the study I do is called brain spectrum imaging, it's a study of blood flow and activity. And if you're a runner, your cardiovascular system is stronger and you have better blood flow.
Man, I was thinking maybe this next marathon I might take a break after it, but now I'm feeling like I can't.
No.
Keep doing it.
We didn't talk about this before. I'm not a huge fan of marathons because they're too much stress.
Okay, then I will take a break.
As you go 26 miles or whatever you're doing, there's a lot of cortisol and a lot of suffering attached to that. So I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of like 5 miles. Like go, have fun. It'll boost serotonin. And the running helps to keep your mind in good shape. When you run, people think of it as an endorphin high. Endorphin blocks out pain. I actually think running is more serotonin high, because when you run, the big amino acids, the big proteins go into your muscles, and tryptophan, which has trouble getting into your brain, there's less competition for it when you run, and it just sort of makes you happy.
No, I mean, I would agree. Like, on days that I don't run, I'm a lot more, like, lethargic. I have, like, less, like, desire or drive to engage or to like pursue what I normally would be like, yep, I need to do that, or like I'm gonna reach out to this person, I'm gonna make that phone call, or like I'm gonna try this new recipe for dinner. Like on the days that I don't do that, I'm usually a little bit more like, not today.
And if you ever got hurt and you couldn't run, then I would supplement you with, we make something called Happy Saffron that has 5-HTP, which is the amino acid precursor for serotonin, and saffron, which has been found in 25 studies to help mood, memory, and sex. So I love saffron so much.
So you've mentioned with Elizabeth, and you've talked a little bit here about supplements and different things that can be done. I think the concept that I want everyone to hear is that you're saying you can reverse poor brain health. Would that be the right term that you would want us to use? But you can, unhealthy parts of the brain or parts of the brain that aren't as developed or are, what did you say, sleepy earlier, parts that are sleepy, that we can reverse some of that to a certain extent. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I think one of the major principles that underlies my work is you're not stuck with the brain you have. Yeah. You can make it better even if you've been bad to it, and I can prove it. We did the big NFL study at a time when the NFL was sort of lying. They had a problem with traumatic brain injury in football, high levels of damage. Mm-hmm. But 80% of our players get better when we put them on a simple regimen of multiple vitamin, fish oil, brain boost, and then just learn to love your brain. So people are going, oh, no, I drank too much, or, oh, I did drugs, or, oh, I had a car accident. I had this woman come up to me. I actually played the video for you guys last night at dinner. And I had an event in our Washington, D.C. clinic. And this woman just comes up. And, you know, like you, I had a line of people. And she had my book, The End of Mental Illness. And it was like, there was like 100 different tags, and you could just tell she read this book.
It was a loved copy.
And she said, "You saved my life." And I'm like, "Thank you." And she said, "No, 20 years ago, or I guess it was 2001, I had a bad concussion playing soccer. And afterwards, I was severely depressed, anxious, and suicidal. And I told myself, if I'm still feeling this way in 20 years, I'm going to kill myself." And at the 19th year, she found The End of Mental Illness. She said she read it. She realized there was something the matter with her brain. She couldn't come get a scan, so she just did everything I write about in the book. And she said, I was better. Instead of killing myself, I went to Hawaii. And then I took your brain health. We have a brain health coaching course, and now I'm helping other people. And that's the whole point. Someone asked me earlier, because I turned 70 this year, it's like, when are you retiring? I'm like, never. Because like, these are the stories that give me great joy.
That keep you going.
Yeah, but you're not stuck with the brain you have. Every day you are making your brain better, or you're making it worse by the decisions that you make.
So someone very close to me has been struggling for a while. And when I talk to her about my, try to, I don't know, almost reason with her, or be like, why this? Or can you explain to me, when I try to share my thoughts or on the situation, or questions on the situation, I mean, she comes back to me and she's like, my brain knows, in here, I know this is wrong. I know everything's wrong. It's right here that I cannot let go of. And so to those people, I guess I'm just I'm curious, how it all works. For them, even though she knows everything, she knows all the reasons or arguments.
But her unconscious doesn't know them.
Okay.
So she's disconnected. Her conscious mind is disconnected from her unconscious mind that's still torturing her, that somehow believes she doesn't deserve the goodness, the right things. And so how do you connect them? And that's where a masterful therapist, either with something like EMDR, if there is past trauma in her life, or there's another one I like a lot called ISTDP, intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, that really helps you get to what's underneath the conscious thoughts and feelings.
I mean, it's just fascinating. It's just so fascinating, like having seen my brain up on the screen and then talking to you, and just, I mean, it's incredible because I feel like it's so easy when someone goes through some trauma, just be like, oh, they need therapy, or oh, they need to go on medication. But I don't hear you discounting that, but I also hear you saying, like, you're not stuck with the brain you have. You can change that every day. And I think that's incredible.
And I think get your brain right, that's foundational. And then you have to train your mind, right? One of the things I teach my patients is how to kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that steal their happiness. You just don't have a lot of ants, right? For someone who went through the trauma you did, your thoughts are pretty rational. So many of my patients, they're just attacked on the inside. They're infested with these automatic negative thoughts. So you have to train the mind, right? Optimize the hardware. Then you got to sort of fix the software, and then work on the network connections, right? What's going on in their relationships, in their lives. Always thinking about what's the point? Like, what's the purpose? And I think too often most psychiatrists don't talk about your spiritual life. And your spiritual life, to me, is why are you on the planet? Are you here by random chance? Or are you here by some design? And you have a purpose to live out. And clearly you're living your purpose, which is to take the trauma and help other people. And I love that. But most of my patients never ask themselves the question, why am I here and what's the point? And it freaks them out. And then they get really afraid to die because they don't know what happens. And I'm like, well, the point is to be present and to be useful.
Well, I feel like with you and Amen Clinics, you're always publishing new research. You have 11 clinics, I know, across the country. I think you're like a 12-time New York Times bestseller with your books. I'm curious, and we've talked a little bit about research that you even released today on ACEs, and we are big fans of the ACEs research at ESF. I'm kind of curious, what's the next thing? Because I feel like you are so progressive with the research and the work that you do on brain health and mental health. So I'm kind of curious what the next thing that you'll be working on is.
I'm currently working on a book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Pain, about the intersection between physical and emotional pain. Oh. And it's like, why does Cymbalta, it's an antidepressant, FDA approved for physical pain syndromes? Why is that? Or SAMe, the supplement SAMe, works for depression and arthritis. Like, why is that? And I'm very excited about this book. I'm almost done with it. And I talk about the doom loop. It's pain for any reason, activates these suffering circuits, the same one activated by the ACE scores. And then it leads to catastrophizing, the ants attack, which then leads to tension, which is already up if you have repressed emotions, which then lead to bad habits and then puts you in this quagmire of the doom loop. And then I talk about the healing loop. And I'm just endlessly curious of how I can be helpful.
I love that.
It's incredible. Well, I will definitely be getting that book. Yeah. I will definitely be reading it.
Thank you for your time with us today. Thanks for having us here. Thanks
what a joy.
It's been amazing.
Showing us Elizabeth's beautiful brain.
That's it for today's episode of Smart Talks. Thank you so much for joining us as we dive into these important conversations about creating a safer, more compassionate world. Remember, sexual violence affects so many, but together we can make a difference by raising awareness, supporting survivors, and advocating for change. If today's episode resonated with you, or if you know someone who would benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. Let's keep the conversation going because every voice matters. You can find more resources and ways to get involved on our website at elizabethsmartfoundation.org. And if you're able, consider making a donation to help us continue our work to end sexual violence and support survivors. Every contribution, big or small, makes a huge difference. And we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media. You'll find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Leave us a review from wherever you're listening. Your feedback helps us to improve and reach even more people. Thanks again for being here, and until next time, remember that each voice can spark change, and together we can make the world a safer place for everyone.